And you go through the shelves, running your fingers on the spines, all the lovely old colors and textures, the way stories were and books were published a while ago. And you go and you pull off this beautiful yellow and red, and you open it up, and we read King Arthur and his knights. The siege of the strong tower. After Arthur was crowned king, many complaints were made to him of great wrongs that had been done since the death of King Uther, many lords, knights, ladies, and gentlemen having been deprived of their lands. Thereupon King Arthur caused the lands to be given again to them that owned them. When this was done, and all the districts around London were settled, he made Sir Kay Seneschal of England, Sir Baldwin Constable of Britain, and Sir Ulfius Chamberlain, while Sir Brastias was appointed warden of the country north of the Trent. Most of this land was then held by the king's enemies, but within a few years Arthur had won all the north. Some parts of Wales still stood out against him, but in due time he overcame them all, as he did the rest, by the noble prowess of himself and the knights of the Round Table. Then King Arthur went into Wales, and proclaimed a great feast to be held at Pentecost after his crowning in the city of Carlion. To this feast came many rich and powerful kings, with great retinues of knights. Arthur was glad of their coming, for he thought that the kings and knights had come in love, and to do him honor at his feast, wherefore he rejoiced greatly, and sent them rich presents. The kings, however, would receive none of them, but rebuked the messengers shamefully, saying it gave them no pleasure to receive gifts from a beardless boy of low blood. They sent him word that they would have none of his gifts, but they would come and give him gifts with hard swords betwixt the neck and the shoulders. It was for that they came hither. So they told the messengers plainly, for it was a great shame to them all to see such a boy have the rule of so noble a realm as this land. When the messengers brought this answer to King Arthur, by the advice of his barons, he betook himself with 500 good men to a strong tower, and all the kings laid siege to him, but King Arthur had plenty of food. Within 15 days Merlin, the great magician, came into the city of Carlion. All the kings were very glad to see him, and asked him, "For what cause is that boy Arthur made your king?" "Sirs," said Merlin, "I will tell you the cause, because he is King Uther Pendragon's son, and whosoever saith nay, Arthur shall be king and overcome all his enemies, and before he dies he shall long have been king of all England, and have under his sway Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, and more realms than I will now relate." Some of the kings marveled at Merlin's words, and deemed it well that it should be as he said, and some of them, such as King Lot of Orkney, laughed at him, and others called him a wizard, but they all consented that King Arthur should come out and speak with them, and gave their assurance that he should come safely and should return safely. So Merlin went to King Arthur and told him what he had done, and bade him fear not, but come out boldly and speak with him. "Spare them not," he said, "but answer them as their king and chieftain, for ye shall overcome them all, whether they will or not." Then King Arthur came out of his tower, having under his gown a cuirass of double mail, and there went with him the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Sir Baldwin, Sir Kay, and Sir Brastias. When he met the kings, there was no meekness, but stout words on both sides, kings went straight over to Arthur, and this comforted him greatly. All the knights fought gallantly, and the battle raged with fury. King Arthur himself was ever in the foremost of the press, till his horse was slain underneath him, and therewith King Lot smote down King Arthur. 4 of his knights rescued him and set him on horseback. Then he drew forth his sword, and it was so bright in his enemies' eyes that it gave light like 30 torches, and thus drove back his foes, and slew many of them. Then the citizens of Carleon arose with clubs and stones and slew many knights, but all the kings banded together with their knights who were alive, and so fled and departed. And Merlin came to Arthur and counseled him to follow them no farther. That sounds like some of the other kings weren't exactly too happy. Let's continue on to this next little bit of the story, I think. Do a little bit more relaxing and listening to a fun story. The Battle of the Kings. After the feast and the tourney, Arthur came to London and called all his barons to a council, for Merlin had told him that the 6 kings who had made war upon him and who he had defeated would hasten to wreak their vengeance on him and his lands. The barons could give no counsel, but said they were big enough to fight. "You say well," said Arthur. "I thank you for your good courage, but will all of you who love me speak with Merlin? You know well that he has done much for me and knows many things, and when he is with you, I wish that you would beseech him to give you his best advice." All the barons said they would gladly hear what Merlin counseled, so the magician was sent for. "I warn you well," said Merlin, "that your enemies are passing strong for you, and they are as good as men of arms as any alive. By this time, too, they have got themselves 4 kings more, and a mighty duke, and unless our king can get more horsemen with him than are to be found within the bounds of his own realm, if he fight with them in battle, he shall be overcome and slain." "What is best to be done?" asked the barons. "I will tell you my advice," said Merlin. "There are 2 brethren beyond the sea, and they are both kings and marvelous powerful men. One is called King Ban of Benwick, the other King Bors of Gaul, that is, France. And again, these 2 brothers wars a mighty man, the King Claudas, and strives with them for a castle, and there is great war betwixt them. But because Claudas is very rich, he gets many good knights to fight for him, and, for the most part, puts these 2 kings to the worse. Now this is my counsel, that our king and sovereign lord send to Kings Ban and Bors 2 trusty knights, with letters stating that if they will come and see Arthur in his court, and can help him in his wars, then he will swear to help them in their wars against King Claudas. Now, what do you say to this counsel?" "This is well counseled," said the king and the barons. So in all haste it was settled. Ulfius and Brastius were chosen as the messengers, and they rode forth well horsed and well armed, and so crossed the sea and rode toward the city of Benwick. Here in a narrow place they were attacked by 8 knights of King Claudas, who tried to kill them or take them prisoner, but Ulfius and Brastius, fighting with them 2 by 2, in turn overcame them all, and left them lying sorely hurt and bruised in the field. When they came to Benwick, it was fortunately happened that both the kings Ban and Bors were there. As soon as the kings knew they were messengers of Arthur's, they gave them the very heartiest greeting, and when Ban and Bors read the letter, they were made even more welcome than before. So Ulfius and Brastius had good cheer and rich gifts, and many they could carry away, and they took back this answer with them, that the 2 kings would come to Arthur in all the haste they could. King Arthur was very glad to get this message, and when the time came for the kings to arrive, he proclaimed a great feast, and went 10 miles out of London to meet them. After the feast there was a splendid tournament in which 700 knights took part. Arthur, Ban, and Bors, with the Archbishop of Canterbury and Sir Ector, Gay's father, sat in a place covered with cloth of gold, like a hall, with ladies and gentlemen to behold who did best, and to give judgment thereon. The knights who won the prizes were 3 of King Arthur's household,